What happens when a wife jokes at a crowded party that anyone could replace her husband, and he answers not with a scene, but with a process? How does a calm man turn humiliation into orderly action while her circle keeps chanting for drama? Can one quiet sentence, "I'll handle this properly," end a marriage louder than any shout? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Isola Vane, and I told a room full of friends that my husband could be replaced. I called it party wit, a joke shaped like confidence, a little spark to keep the music warm. The room laughed the way rooms do when someone lets them be cruel for sport. I laughed too, because pride loves an audience. At home, the laugh sounded different. Two mugs stood on opposite counters, like neighbors who nod but do not wave. Caleb's laptop showed a thin spreadsheet of initials and dates, the kind of order that keeps storms from owning rooms. His phone lit with a quiet reminder, Portico, 9:15 a.m., and went dark as if secrets respected schedules. The printer beside the wall woke and slid out a single blank page, a white flag I pretended not to see. In my gallery, a photo waited, a clipboard corner with one word, statement, no letterhead, no numbers, just a shape that meant rules. A desk drawer clicked shut when I stepped in, the gentle sound of a boundary closing. I told myself I had been modern, brave, funny. He said later we would talk. I said later felt like a verdict. The wall planner's red circle around Friday looked like a mouth preparing to say no. I woke before the sun and told myself last night had been theatre, not truth. I said my line was a shape to make people laugh, not a knife for home. The kettle hissed. I set two mugs on opposite counters because that is where they have learned to live. Caleb walked in with a quiet face that was not empty, only organized. He said good morning. I said good morning. He opened his laptop and the screen showed a thin spreadsheet of initials and dates. The light from the screen sat on his knuckles as if it belonged there. I said it looked like rooting. He said it helped him think. I said, thinking is loving when it is calm. He did not answer. The printer by the wall woke and slid a single blank page into the tray, like a breath you can see. I laughed once and said the house wanted peace in writing. He said sometimes nothing is the only honest line. The words did not shout. They landed like folded towels. I stepped into the guest room to find a charger, or to pretend I needed one. The desk drawer clicked shut the moment the hinge spoke. It was a small, exact sound, the kind that says a rule lives here. I said I only needed a pen. He said he would bring it later. I said later felt like a hallway that never ends. He said later kept people from slipping on stairs. A clipboard corner in my gallery came to mind, the one with a photo that shows only the word statement and nothing else. I told myself it was for utilities. Utilities are the bones of a house, not a threat. I put the phone away and left the room as if it was sleeping. In the kitchen, the wall planner had a red circle around Friday. The circle looked too thick, like a mouth pressed hard against a word. I touched the paper and said the ink was just ink. Caleb's phone lit with a bar that read Portico 9:15 a.m. and went dark before my eyes could ask for more. I said meetings are normal. He said schedules keep storms from using the door. I said storms also respect windows. He did not smile. The kettle clicked off. Steam braided into the air and then disappeared like a polite guest. I told him I wanted to talk now, not later. I said my joke had been a spark, not a match. I said I was trying to be modern and clever and brave. He said we could talk later. I said later felt like a verdict. He said later was a seatbelt. I said I did not need a seatbelt. I needed soft hands. He said he would not fight in the kitchen. He closed the laptop. For a second, a cloud sync toast blinked and vanished. I stared at the blank page the printer had offered. It looked like a truce no one had signed. My mother, Mila, sent 3 messages before breakfast. She said we should post a bright photo and take control of the story. She said the internet loves a couple that laughs at rumors. She said I should send her a caption with a sparkle emoji. I told her I was keeping the day quiet. She said silence looks like surrender. I put the phone face down and let the screen cool. Caleb's mother, Ruth, called once and hung up before voicemail. A text followed. She said she was available for rides and logistics. She did not ask questions. She did not use a period like a hammer. Her calm pressed against my chest in a way I did not like. I tried to be useful. I wiped a counter that did not need wiping. I arranged fruit in a bowl, like order could trick time. I told Caleb I had been easing a tense moment at a party. I said people needed heat to stay awake, and I'd given them a safe match. He said people do not need matches near curtains. I said I had kept the fire far from the curtains. He said someone had still opened a window. I said I was not the wind. He looked at the mugs. He chose none. He put on his jacket. A new key on his ring flashed like a cold coin. I asked what it opened. He said organizing. I said organizing sounded like moving. He said organizing sounded like breathing. He picked up his phone. At the top, a thread titled Follow-up flashed, and then snapped shut, as if it had been told not to be seen. I said we could have breakfast together anyway, he said later. He opened the door. The latch made a clean bite. The hallway held his footsteps for a second, and then returned them to the world. I stood alone with the blank page, the red circle, and my mouth. I told the air I had only wanted to seem strong. I said strength is a costume you must iron every morning. The air did not answer. A neighbor's radio rose through the floor and faded. I took the blank page and slid it under a magnet shaped like a lemon. It looked like a white flag dressed for summer. The room relaxed by 1 degree, then remembered me and tightened again. I walked to work because I needed proof the city still moved. The elevator's mirror showed me a face that could pass inspection. I pressed that face on and carried it like a small shield. In the lobby, I gave a polite nod to a woman with a stroller. She lifted 2 fingers in reply, the old sign for peace. I wanted to borrow the sign and stick it to my windows. The street smelled like wet stone and coffee. I told myself I would not perform today. I told myself I would speak softly, make lists, and leave corners alone. At the rooftop venue, Wren waited with a clipboard and an expression that made room for truth. She said I looked pale. I said the sky was pale. She said the sky recovers by noon. I said I would try. She asked if I had seen the tags from the party. I said angles lie. She said angles also tell the truth people hide. She placed water by my elbow and asked if I wanted to rehearse the welcome line for the lunch group. I said I would keep it simple. She nodded and showed me a schedule. The times sat in their boxes like pillows. I wanted to lie down on them. A coworker drifted by with a phone and did a slow pan across the deck. I turned so the banner behind me said our values and not my confusion. Ms. Bryn, the manager, lifted a hand and asked for a minute with her eyes. I stepped into her office and sat on the chair that never squeaks. She said our brand likes to be useful, not noisy. I said I understood. She said she had booked a quick word for later, just to plan staffing and make sure I had what I needed. I said I did. She said rumors are weather. Our job is roofs. I said I would stop talking to the weather. She smiled at that. She said 410, HR room. I nodded. We stood at the same time and it felt even. Back at the front desk, I opened my phone to draft a caption. I wrote that I had made a bad joke and I was sorry. I deleted it. I wrote that humor can harm, and I was choosing quiet. I deleted that too. Mila sent me a string of brightly staged selfies from last month and said we should repost one and write, "Still laughing, still us." I put the phone away. Ruth sent me a single line. I can drive or wait in the lobby, whatever helps. I felt the old ache of being seen without being made into a poster. I said I would let her know. She replied with a dot and nothing else. The dot felt like a chair. The noon group arrived in 2s and 3s. the way people who like each other arrive. I welcome them with 3 sentences about small good work on regular days. They clapped just enough. A woman with a denim jacket asked if I believed rumors should be addressed directly. I said, "Our venue serves coffee and power outlets and calm." She laughed in a kind way and went to the rail. The afternoon moved. I checked cables, filled water pitchers, and gave the same smile to everyone so no one felt special or punished. Across the room, a courier in a neutral jacket stood by the elevator. He held 2 plain envelopes, like a person cradling bread. He did not scan for me. He scanned for the next instruction. The elevator bell chimed. He stayed. Ren leaned near my shoulder and whispered that we should keep exits clear. I said exits were clear. She said some exits hide in people's faces. I did not ask which faces. On my short break, I passed the admin desk and glanced at the shared terminal. A browser window was open to storage options and Notary, near me and delivery tracking. I told myself the tabs belonged to a project. Projects always need delivery tracking. I closed the window and walked back into the sun. My phone vibrated with a calendar bar I had not set. Atrium 6:05 p.m. The letters sat like small teeth and then folded into black. I said out loud that plant spaces need light. Ren asked who needed light. I said, "Never mind, it is only a word." Ms. Bryn sent a message. 4:10. HR quick word? The elevator bell chimed as the message landed, like the building wanted to knit cause and effect into a neat scarf. I typed yes and put the phone away. Jonah, the friend who always liked a crowd, sent a direct message that said, "We are cool, right?" I took a screenshot and deleted it. I told myself that deleting turns noise into a closed door. I told myself closed doors keep rooms from burning. A client walked over with a glass of sparkling water and said I looked steady. I said, "Steadiness is a job." He said some people sell it, some people have it. I said I rent it by the hour. He laughed and lifted his glass. Behind him, another slow pan happened. The camera loved the deck and the glow and the way I stood very straight. I felt like a statue hired to whisper calm into a day that was already loud. Near the end of the shift, the same courier lingered again. He had the posture of a person who listens more than he speaks. He glanced at the concierge desk, at the elevator, at the door. Nothing changed. He stayed still, the way furniture stays still to teach people how to move around it. I told myself the envelopes were for a different floor. I told myself stories can be true if you hold them right. I gathered notebooks and returned to the office. Ms. Bryn waited with her kind face set to work mode. She said staffing was fine for the weekend if we swapped 2 shifts. I said I could cover both mornings. She said take one and pass one. I said done. She said there was chatter and we would not feed it. I said I would not feed it. She said to call if I felt pushed. I said I would stand where the floor is strongest. She smiled because she knew I had finally said a useful sentence. We left the room together. Outside, the elevator bell announced another arrival. The courier checked his watch and stayed a chair. Back at the desk, I drafted a message to my mother. I said we would not post anything tonight. She replied with a paragraph about optics and loss of narrative and a final line that said I was letting strangers write my story. I put the phone away and counted power cords. Ruth pinged a dot again, and then a sentence. Soup at my place if that helps. I typed that I had to be at the HR quick word at 4:10. She sent the thumbs up emoji and then nothing more. The nothing felt like mercy. I looked through the glass and saw the city turn its color toward evening. The banner hung straight. The chairs stood patient. People made small plans and kept them. My mouth wanted to explain itself to someone who would hold my words without grading them. I lived with my own echo instead. A coworker asked if she should print the handout for tomorrow. The printer woke and slid a blank page first, then the real stack. The blank page lay on top, like a joke the machine tells itself. I lifted it, smoothed its corner, and placed it under the pile. A small white flag under real instructions. The courier moved toward the elevator and then back to his place. The bell chimed again, polite and regular. Ms. Bryn waved at me across the room and pointed to her watch. I nodded and checked the time. The quick word was minutes away. My phone vibrated. The message said the same, 4:10 HR quick word, as if to underline paper with paper. Behind the glass, the day looked clean. Inside my ribs, the day felt like a drawer that clicks shut when I walk toward it. The manager confirms a 4:10 HR quick word as the elevator bell chimes. A courier with neutral envelopes lingers by the doors and scans the room without hunting. I told myself a crowd would rinse the stain if I controlled the angle, so I arrived early at the friend's house with 2 trays and a fixed smile. The living room had fairy lights, a speaker that breathed bass, and a coffee table covered in bowls that tried too hard. In the kitchen, people stacked glassware like a puzzle. I placed the trays, said I was happy to help, and let the statement sit as if it were a good deed. Jonah drifted in through the back door from the yard, holding 2 limes in one hand and his charm in the other. He said the playlist was weak. I said the house wanted mellow. He laughed and set the limes down near my wrists, too near for the story I needed. I moved a step without making it a scene. He said I was still mad. I said I was busy. He smiled like a person who thinks smiles are receipts. I took the limes, cut them clean, and handed them to someone else. In the hallway mirror, I corrected my face. The mirror kept its opinion to itself. Guests arrived in rows of 3, then clumps of 5. Phones rose. Someone filmed the front door because entrances are currency. A cousin's friend did a slow pan and caught my profile in the same frame as Jonah's shoulder. I turned toward the counter and picked up a tray so the sequence would not have a sequel. In the backyard, lanterns swayed, and the long table posed like a magazine. People practiced being joyful. A man asked if I would give a short welcome, because a pregnant host is always good for likes. I said I was not hosting. He said the camera did not care. I said that was the problem. He laughed because he believed in harmless problems. Near the grill, 2 women scrolled a clip from the previous week and stopped on a freeze frame where my mouth looked mean. One of them said I had edge. The other said edge cuts people you love. I carried the tray past them and placed it on the table like I was feeding a large, complicated animal. Inside, I poured water and told myself I would talk to Caleb first, then to the room. He stood near the bookshelf with Lena, Jonah's sister, who was not smiling. I walked toward them and felt the air try to write a caption. Caleb said I looked tired. I said I felt responsible. Lena said responsibility does not arrive after the post goes up. I said I had not posted. She said that was not better. I wished her a good night because some bridges can only carry so much. A chant tried to start near the speaker. Truth toast, someone said like a joke that planned to grow teeth. I put the tray down, lifted a hand, and offered gratitude instead. I said, friends keep houses warm when weather turns. I said we were grateful, careful, and building small good days from ordinary hours. Phones lifted anyway. Jonah came to the edge of my space and held up a glass like a co-host. I angled away and invited the host to speak. She spoke kindly about showing up for each other. The room clapped in a polite key. For 3 minutes we were fine. Then someone replayed a short clip of me at another party the night I'd said anyone could replace a husband. Laughter sharpened and then went quiet, as if it wanted me to cut my own ribbon. I breathed. I said I had been trying to be funny and had failed. I said I was sorry for wasting the room's time. A camera flash popped like a small storm. Jonah leaned against the door frame, not touching me, but too close for a draft. Caleb's face did not change. He held the same posture he uses when he carries a heavy box past a sleeping child. I wanted him to shout, or to bless, or to break the room open. Anything but this calm. Calm makes a person listen to their own sentence. I moved to the yard to reduce the heat. People followed because heat is a magnet. Out by the trees, a man with a thin mustache asked if modern couples should test boundaries in public so others could learn. I said experiments require consent. He said applause looks like consent on camera. I said applause is often just hands afraid to be alone. Behind us, the host tapped her glass. She asked for a nice moment. The chant tried again, softer now. Truth toast, smarter than last time. I smiled a neutral smile and asked the host to talk about her new job. She did. The room remembered its first purpose and leaned into her story. A relief that felt like a small bench arrived inside my ribs. Later, the long table drew us back in. The tablecloth pretended it had always lived here. We sat. Conversation moved in safe lanes. Someone toasted a new lease. Someone complained about slow apps. Someone praised cheap flowers. A cousin placed her phone flat and then lifted it again because phones do not like to rest. Across the table, Ruth arrived with her careful coat and her low voice. She hugged the host, shook hands with two strangers, and greeted Caleb with a palm to his arm. She greeted me by name and asked if I needed water. I said I was fine. She said fine is serviceable but not kind. She placed a glass near my plate and sat near the end where she could see the whole river. Mila came in late, already forming a photo with her eyes. She said we should take one bright picture before dessert. I said tonight did not want bright pictures. She said images heal faster than apologies. Ruth said images also cut. Mila asked if she could write a caption. Ruth said to let people breathe. The table heard the two women and did not choose sides. The host said dessert was ready. A child near the corner clapped twice with serious hands. The air remembered what a party is supposed to be. Halfway through dessert, a calendar bar slid across Caleb's phone and hid itself before anyone could ask. I caught one word and a time, harbor 3:10 p.m. I told myself harbors hold boats, and boats mean weekends, and weekends mean errands. Jonah's laugh rose from the doorway like an elevator. He stood too close to the host and held court about nothing. People pretended to care because he makes pretending easy. I looked at Caleb for a sign that we would leave together, make tea, draw lines, build a list. He poured water for Ruth and asked the host about a chair that wobbled. He did not make me into a scene. He did not make me into a rescue. The cousins at the end asked for one last toast. They wanted second chances. They wanted a cheerful soundbite that could outrun the small, cruel clip. I stood and said I was grateful for people who show up, even when the road is muddy. The table put their glasses up. Phones rose like a small, glittering forest. A flash went off. Caleb placed his glass on the table, folded his napkin, and stood. He helped Ruth with her chair. He touched the wood with his palm for a second, like a thank you, and walked toward the hall. He said goodnight to the host in a voice that carried no complaint and no question. He left the room correct and whole. The phones followed him as if his back were a sunrise. I stayed and smiled until my teeth felt like they were filling out forms. People came to say goodnight with words that tried not to pick sides. Jonah said we were cool and that he would stay out of the way. I said there was no way. He nodded as if wisdom had spoken. I wanted to break every glass and replace them with bowls big enough for apologies. Instead, I gathered plates, rinse-wiped them, and stacked them into neat hope. Back at our apartment door, footsteps paused outside and then moved on. The door latch clicked like a comma. Inside, the printer coughed once and slid a blank page forward like a white pet. The wall planner's red circle around Friday looked thicker in the low light. In the guest room, the desk drawer clicked the moment the hinge spoke. I said I needed a pen. Caleb, already in the hallway, said he would bring it later. I said later felt like a person. He said later was a rule that keeps rooms from breaking. I wanted to tell him rules were also hammers. I said nothing. He closed the bedroom door. The click sounded like a boundary a court might envy. Phones lift for a truth toast, a flash pops, and Caleb stands, and leaves without a word, while a calendar bar, harbor 3:10 p.m., flares and fades. I told myself family would hold the middle if I could not, so I invited them to a park bench the next afternoon. The playground had the bright colors of a lie told to small people. Swing squeaked. A boy practiced a speech for school and forgot the same line 4 times. He still kept going. I envied his kind of courage. Ruth arrived with a thermos and sat with her coat folded over one knee. She said she brought tea. I said I could use a new spine. She said tea first. Mila came a minute later with a scarf and 3 photo ideas. She said we could shoot by the tall grass because it hides tired eyes. Ruth said grass is not a filter. Mila smiled politely and checked her angles with the front camera. Goran appeared with sandwiches and hope. He said time and soup fix more than people expect. I said I was not sure this was a soup problem. He said then it is a time problem, and time is abundant until you waste it. Timo ran up with a paper airplane and asked if it was true that adults test love like parachutes. I said adults name things badly when they are scared. He asked if I had been scared. I said yes. He asked if I had asked for help before I jumped. I said no. He nodded the way children nod when a math problem is too easy to be interesting. He said parachutes need packing by careful hands. He ran back to the slide, satisfied that he had completed the adult homework. Ruth watched him and then watched me. She said he is literal. I said literal can be merciful. We walked the loop by the trees. Mila wanted to record a clarification. She said people love honesty if it comes with clean light and hopeful music. Ruth said honesty does not need music. Mila said music is how honesty travels on phones. I said I would rather stay quiet. Mila said silence looks like guilt. Ruth said silence looks like respect. They looked at me as if I were a vote. I set the vote aside and watched a kite try to teach the wind about lines. Caleb joined us without ceremony. He said he had 15 minutes before a meeting. He asked Timo about the airplane and then fixed the bent nose with 2 fingers. He did not look at my phone. He did not ask for my script. He asked if Ruth needed a ride later. She said she could take the metro. He said he would drive anyway. Mila asked if we could take a family photo by the bench. Caleb said, not today. Mila said today is exactly the day. He said not today again, and sat on the far end of the bench like a person waiting for a train that has already been announced. I tried to apologize in public words, the kind that make space for witnesses. I said I had made a joke that took more than it gave. I said I was sorry for turning our house into a stage. He said he heard me. He did not say more. I wanted to say he was cold. I wanted to say my belly needed warmth. I said none of it. The kite dived and recovered. Ruth poured tea for all of us and slipped me a small packet of sugar. I added the sugar and called it forgiveness in my head. That kind of magic never works, but I keep trying it. When we stood to leave, a notification flared on Caleb's screen. Meeting, personal 8:40 a.m. He pressed the side button, and the bar slid into black. I watched his thumb, not his face. The habit felt ridiculous, like studying a messenger pigeon instead of the note on its leg. He said he would catch up later. He nodded at Ruth, at Goran, and at me. He left with the same even step that refuses to make music. Mila said the optics were killing us. She said a quick shoot in the tall grass would change the whole weather. Ruth said the weather would do what it wanted. She told me to rest, eat, and stop reading comments. Goran said he could make soup if I came by. Timo yelled that his plane could do a loop if I counted to 3. I counted to 3, and the plane did not loop. It crashed with polite determination. He ran to fix it. I envied him again. We split for errands. I took the metro to clear my head and watched my reflection practice sentences that would not embarrass a stranger. In the window, my mouth looked like a person trying to talk through a glove. A message preview lit for a moment from a thread named follow-up. It vanished before a verb arrived. I thought of the desk drawer that clicks shut when the hinge speaks, and felt the same small, clean refusal. The train rocked. I rocked with it and told myself balance is a moving skill. Back home, the apartment held a low hum. The smell of printer toner hung faint as if paper had been warm. The wall planner's red circle around Friday had deepened by either ink or imagination. In the guest room, the bedspread showed a straight crease like a held breath. The desk drawer clicked the moment the hinge announced me. I said I needed a pen. Caleb, passing in the hall with his coat, said later. I said later sounded like exile. He said later kept walls from cracking. He put the coat on the back of a chair. The new key on his ring caught the light like a quiet sentence. I moved to the kitchen to cut fruit because fruit never asks for a statement. The printer woke and fed a single blank page again, then went to sleep. I placed the page under a magnet beside the others. A small banner on the laptop in the corner blinked. File uploaded successfully, and swallowed itself. On the corkboard, a sticky note in Caleb's square hand said, "Bring forms." I read it 3 times and tried to remember what kind of forms a person brings to a life that used to be easy. I told myself it was a delivery thing, or a warranty, or some routine harvest of signatures that proves a person is alive. Mila called and said we had to post by 9, or we would lose the thread. I said we already had. She said defeatist language invites defeat. I said defeat had not asked for an invitation. Ruth texted a single dot, then a line. Driving at 7:10 if either of you needs a ride. I stared at the time like it could confess a secret. The time confessed nothing. Goran sent a photo of soup with steam. He wrote, "It is waiting." I put the phone down and leaned on the counter until my elbows felt like hinges. That night I set the table because rituals are small bridges over cracked ground. Caleb came out of the bedroom with a neat stack of receipts and a calm face. He said he would eat later. I said later is a country I do not have a passport for. He said later is where we are. I said later sounds like you are leaving me here. He said he would be back in an hour. He looked at the 2 mugs across from each other and chose water. He put the receipts in the desk drawer. It clicked shut when the hinge spoke, exact and unafraid. He took the car keys. The car in the garage had been turned so it faced the street, as if backing into a life is too slow. He said he would be careful. I said, "Careful is a word you use when you put something fragile in a box with paper." He nodded. He did not argue. He left, and the door latch made its clean bite. Footsteps paused outside and then faded. The oven fan clicked on by itself and hummed. Somewhere in the other room, a shredder rose, ate a thin mouthful, and went quiet. I stood in the doorway and watched the air for answers it did not have. When he returned, he washed his hands and said he was done arguing. I said we had not argued. He said we had rehearsed scenes. He said he would handle matters properly. The word properly sat between us like a folded letter I was not allowed to read. I said properly sounded like a threat. He said properly sounded like rules to keep harm from growing legs. He moved a mug half an inch away from the other mug and left them both on their counters, separate but present. He looked at the wall planner without touching it. He asked if I had eaten. I said a little. He nodded once. He said he would sleep in the guest room. I said I hated that room. He said the room was not the problem. He turned off the kitchen light and walked down the hall. The desk drawer clicked when the hinge spoke. The house accepted the arrangement the way a stage accepts a new set between acts. I lay in bed and listened to the small sounds of an organized person making a plan. Pages slid, a zipper closed, the quiet beep of a recording app started and stopped, soft and careful. I told myself I could still write a statement that saved us. I told myself statements can be bridges if you choose the right wood. The ceiling did not answer, and the night has never been a carpenter. Timo asks if I packed the parachute before I jumped. Later, the shredder hums and stops. A calendar toast, meeting, personal 8:40 a.m., flares and fades, while the guest room drawer clicks shut as Caleb says, I'll handle matters properly. I told myself order was a raft, so I made a list and put milk and bread on top like anchors. I added fruit and a note that said, "Be gentle out loud." The apartment wore the quiet of a library before opening. 2 mugs stood on opposite counters, faithful to their new borders. The printer light glowed and went still. Caleb came from the hall with sleeves rolled once. He said good morning. I said good morning. He washed his hands like a person coming off a factory floor, even though he touched only paper. His phone lit with the word private and went dark before I could shape a question. A calendar bar slid across, small and neat, depot 12:40 p.m., and hid itself. I told myself, depots store things, and storage means planning. I said, planning is care. He said planning keeps harm from growing legs. The sentence sounded like a door with a lock. I went out with the list. The building smelled like dust and lemon. On the landing, a neighbor said the news looked bad. I said screens make everything look big. She nodded at my middle and said, rest is more than sleep. I said I would try. Outside, the day had soft edges. I took the pharmacy queue because it was first on the corner, and I wanted to be a person who does first things first. A woman 2 spots ahead scrolled a clip with the sound off. It rested on a freeze frame of my face near a patio light, bold as a sign. She noticed me noticing and turned the phone a few degrees like a curtain. The cashier asked if I needed a bag. I said yes, then no, then yes. He slid the items toward me and said he hoped my day would not be heavy. I said I hoped the same and felt something tilt inside. At the supermarket, a child tried to convince a cart to roll straight. I picked apples and picked them again. The overhead screen ran local clips, then an ad, then a skyline, then a headline about weather. It hovered 1 beat too long on a rooftop crowd where I stood in that old edge frame. I put the apples back and chose pears because pears do not judge. At checkout, the scanner beeped with the rhythm of work done on time. The clerk asked if I found everything. I said I found more than I needed. She said sometimes that is the problem. She gave me a receipt that did not tell any story. The stairwell hummed when I came home. Inside, the guest room drawer clicked the moment the hinge spoke. I said I needed a pen. Caleb said he would bring it later. I said later sounded like exile. He said later protected the floor from cracks. On the corkboard, a sticky note in his square hand said, bring forms. The ink looked fresh, not rushed. The laptop on the side table blinked a small toast, file uploaded successfully, and swallowed its own light. I tried to treat it like wallpaper. I failed. I cut fruit at the counter because knives, used correctly, are honest. The printer warmed and fed a single blank page. I made a small laugh and called it our truce again. He did not smile. He looked at the blank page and then at the mugs and then at the wall planner. He said he would be out for a bit. I asked if it was errands. He said organizing. I said organizing sounded like boxes moving around a room. He said organizing sounded like air moving through a chest. He picked up the keys. The new key on his ring caught the light. I said I could come. He said today was not today for together errands. I said I would delete posts and ask friends to delete theirs and block the ones who would not. He said I could choose for myself. He said choices had weight his shoulders could not carry for me. He looked level as he said it. The door latch made its clean bite. Footsteps paused outside, then continued, even and counted. I stood still until the stairwell stopped owning my ears. I washed a bowl that was not dirty. I made tea I did not drink. I sent a heart to Ruth and said I might need a ride later. She sent a dot and then said she was at the curb at 7:10 if needed. I typed maybe and did not send it. Miller called and said the next 90 minutes were key and that a bright image could fix more than a plan. I said quiet would be my plan. She said quiet was rust. I set the phone face down and let the screen turn into a lake. When he came back, he brought the hallway with him, the cool air of outside, the smell of paper, and a brief moment of wind. He washed his hands again, then checked the stove to make sure no burner wore a blue crown. He said he would not rehearse scenes. I said there was no scene. He said we were not doing blame tonight. I said there had to be something. He said there would be rules. He said he would handle matters properly. The word properly sat between us like a folded map with no pictures, only clean black lines. I said properly sounded like a blade. He said properly sounded like fences to keep wind off the crib. He stacked receipts and tapped them into a square. He moved a mug half a finger to the left and left it there. He looked at the wall planner without touching it. He said he would sleep in the guest room again. I said I hated the guest room. He said the room was not the problem. He closed the door, and the drawer, and the air followed his order. Night made everything strong. Strong shadows, strong shapes, strong memory of light. I lay awake and listened to the noise a careful person makes when he creates a path. Pages shifted. A zipper closed. A low recording beep came and went, patient and exact. The shredder hummed, took a thin breath of paper, and went quiet again. I told myself I still had a bridge left to build in the morning. I said I could walk across if I did not look down. The ceiling gave back nothing. I woke early and made the list again, as if lists were candles. Milk, bread, fruit, and a single sentence I could speak without tearing. The apartment felt like a courtroom before anyone enters. At the sink, I practiced the sentence. It sounded like a person asking a door for weather. Caleb came from the hall with his phone and a jacket. He said he would be out by 6. I asked where. He said scheduling. I said schedules kept storms from using the door. He said that was the idea. His phone flashed atrium 6:35 p.m. and hid the words. I asked if he would let me stand beside him when he talked to whoever he was talking to. He said today was not a day for me to carry his bag. He said he would carry it himself. He said again that he would handle this properly. The repetition felt like a stamp. He left without making the hallway a theatre. I sat on the chair that never squeaks and wrote the apology I thought the air would believe. I read it once. I deleted it. I made soup because Goran had sent a photo of steam, and I wanted to taste at least one good idea. I did not taste anything. I put the spoon down like a tool that no longer fit its bolt. The clock on the stove did its simple job and moved forward without speeches. He repeats, "I'll handle this properly," while a calendar bar, atrium 6:35 p.m., glows and fades. The printer feeds a blank page. Footsteps pause outside our door and move on. I went downtown at dusk because movement is a kind of courage. Glass towers held the sky in squares. The public plaza by the courthouse had pigeons that understood benches and people who did not need a map. A fountain made the sound of coins without asking for wishes. I stood near a low planter and folded my hands because empty hands can look like calm. Mr. Verdant, the plaza concierge with the green tie, nodded and wrote a time in a slim book. He said the building would close at 8. I said I would not keep it long. Caleb arrived without haste and without delay, the way he walks when he needs to step through a broken place without breaking it more. He said my name. I said his. He thanked Mr. Verdant for the clarity of the signs. The sentence sounded like a person who chooses fences over fireworks. I started the only sentence I had left. I said fear made me loud and jokes made me blind. I said the room had laughed, and I wanted the room to love me more than I wanted my house to be quiet. I said I was sorry. The words stood alone, without costume. He listened with his hands on the back of a public bench, the way he touched wood at the party, steady and plain. A person in a neutral jacket approached from the left. The jacket said function. The face said routine. The person asked me to confirm my name. I confirmed it because names are what you have when you have no story left. The person asked for an identifier. I offered it. A pen appeared. A line waited. My hand made a mark without shaking. The envelope moved from one hand to mine in a measured slide. No drama, no angle, just exchange. The plaza accepted the fact and did not clap. I opened the top of the envelope because suspense is worse than pain. The first page used words that do not perform. It was a divorce petition with temporary orders. It did not accuse, it arranged. It said which days each person would be in the apartment for now. It said who would pay which bills for now. It said our communication would be respectful and direct, and if we could not manage that, we would use a neutral channel until a longer plan existed. It said posts and public hints about the dispute must stop now. It said property would not be moved or hidden. It said the orders were immediate. It did not raise its voice. I said this was public humiliation. I said plazas are stages, and stages turn pain into proof. Caleb said this was clarity. He said the plaza was only a place where facts could change hands without a camera telling the story. He said he had chosen open air because doorways echo, and he did not want the moment to sound larger than it was. He thanked the staff member for their time, the way he thanks a driver for careful braking. He did not turn into a different man to win a scene. He stayed himself. Across the stone, a child asked for directions to a dentist, and Mr. Verdant pointed with 2 fingers and a smile. Pigeons hopped like punctuation. The fountain kept whispering. A pair of heels clicked on tile and softened into carpet when the lobby swallowed them. The world continued with its own plot while mine stood on a single page. I read the lines that mattered twice. Interim possession, interim finances, respectful communication, no posts, coordinated handoffs. I felt each word land like furniture I had not ordered, but now needed to walk around. The furniture made the room safer, even if I did not like the shape. I said I would delete everything, and ask for deletes, and accept what would not be erased. He said I could choose for myself. He said choices had weight and the process would carry the rest. He did not request proof. He did not anchor it to love or to anger. He anchored it to rails. My phone rang in my pocket. It said, Mila calling. I let it ring. It stopped. A message appeared from Ruth with a single line. I can drive if needed. I sent back a dot and then the words, I will walk. The dot felt like a chair again. Jonah did not appear. Lena did not appear. The plaza did not require extras for this scene. The staff member in the neutral jacket stepped a half-pace back and became part of the air. Mr. Verdant noted the time with his small pen and closed the book with a soft sound like a kind door. Caleb thanked the process. He did not try to fix me with a sentence or ask me to perform a pledge. He said he would follow the orders and expected me to do the same. He said we could be careful now. He stepped toward the revolving door that belonged to the tower next to the plaza. The elevator bell inside dinged, as if to say that time had a plan for other people too. I wanted to ask for a last look, the movie kind, but movies use violins and this plaza used rules. I asked instead if he would let me know about the schedule for the apartment. He said the schedule was on the page and would begin tonight. He said he would pick up what he needed on his days and leave receipts when he did. I said that was not necessary. He said it helped him think. It was the same sentence from the kitchen, and it made the same kind of sense. He placed a folded blanket on the bench, the one Marina had brought to our table once. He said it was mine for cold walks. He did not touch my shoulder. He did not say my name again. He walked away with the same even step. The revolving door took him in and gave him back to the street. Pigeons rose, then settled. The fountain kept its coin sound running. I held the envelope that spoke in small, clean verbs. I felt the orders take shape around me like rails. Rails are not romantic, but trains arrive. I looked at the plaza and tried to find the part where a person makes a large public promise and wins something back. There was no part like that. There was only a bench, a tie, a book, a pen, an envelope, and a woman who had called her to joke until the joke burned the house. I folded the papers and slid them back into their envelope, slow and exact, because exactness felt like the only honor left. Mr. Verdant held the door to the lobby in case I wanted to sit inside. I said I would stand in the air. Service in the courthouse public plaza. Divorce petition with temporary orders handed over. Mr. Verdant notes the time. The elevator bell from the adjacent tower dings. The result lands. Cut to black. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.